So with the 2019 NFL season over and done with and the 2020 NFL season right around the corner, I thought it might be fun to go back and talk a little bit about the best players from the 2019 NFL season. More specifically, I thought it would be fun to go through each team and list off their best player heading into 2020. So today I'm going to be giving you my list of the best players from each and every NFL team. But before we get into this video, I can't believe it, you guys. I need to quickly take some time to thank you all in advance for 6,000 subscribers. You guys, this channel is growing at an astronomical rate, and I can't even begin to express how grateful I am for your support. I also want to quickly mention that only a small percentage of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you do end up enjoying this video and haven't done so already, please do consider subscribing for daily NFL football videos. And with that being said, let's get started. Kicking things off in the NFC North, we have the Packers, and the Packers' best player is linebacker Zadarius Smith, who came in from the Baltimore Ravens in 2019 and had an immediate impact on that Packers pass rush. In total, he racked up 14 sacks, the 6th most in the league and 4th most among linebackers. Zadarius Smith is an acquisition that is already paying big dividends for the Packers. The best player on the Vikings is safety Anthony Harris, who led the league in interceptions in 2019, tied with Stephon Gilmore and Tre'Davious White for 6 interceptions. However, he only played 14 games to White's 15 and Gilmore's 16. He's having a major impact on that Vikings lethal secondary. The best player on the Bears is defensive end Khalil Mack, who had somewhat of a down year in 2019. However, a down year for Mack is a great year for any other defensive end, where he racked up 9 sacks and 47 combined tackles. I'm definitely expecting Mack to rebound in 2020, but even then, he's great in 2019. And rounding out the NFC North, the best player on the Lions is wide receiver Kenny Golladay, who spent 8 games catching passes from Jeff Driscoll and David Blau, yet still led the league in receiving touchdowns and had 1,190 receiving yards. I mean, just imagine what numbers Golladay would have put up if Stafford hadn't gone out halfway through the season. Moving on to the AFC North, the best player on the Browns is running back Nick Chubb, who even with mediocre offensive line play finished behind Derrick Henry with the 2nd most rushing yards in 2019 among running backs. He put up 1,494 yards on the ground with 298 carries, which is simply incredible. The Browns definitely have found a keeper as Chubb enters his 3rd year in the NFL. The best player on the Ravens is quarterback Lamar Jackson, and I mean, who didn't see this one coming? Lamar put up 3,127 yards through the air, passing for 36 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions, and broke Michael Vick's single-season quarterback rushing record with 1,206 yards on the ground. And fact is, Lamar is easily the best player right now on the Ravens. The best player on the Steelers is linebacker TJ Watt, who dominated opposing teams, putting up 15 sacks and leading the league with, get this, 8 forced fumbles, racking up twice as much as the player who came in 2nd place in that category. Watt will look to continue to wreak havoc on offenses as he enters his 4th season in the league in 2020. And the best player on the Bengals is defensive end Carlos Dunlap, who had a solid individual season, putting up 9 sacks with a combined 63 tackles. In an abysmal season for the Bengals, Carlos Dunlap was a breath of fresh air for the team. Moving on to the NFC East, the Eagles' best player is tight end Zach Ertz, who cemented himself as the most reliable receiving target on the Eagles for Wentz in 2019. Ertz had the 4th most receiving yards among tight ends in 2019, racking up 916 yards through the air, and is without a doubt the best player on the Eagles. The best player on the Cowboys is running back Ezekiel Elliott, who some kind of think may have had a down year when, in all actuality, he had the 4th most rushing yards in the NFL in 2019, putting up 1,357 yards on the ground with 301 carries to his name. Zeke is a workhorse back that is an integral piece to that Cowboys offense. The best player on the Redskins is defensive tackle Matt Ioannidis, who is not the reason why the Redskins have the second pick in the draft by any means. With 9 sacks and 64 combined tackles at defensive tackle, he had a solid year despite his team's struggles. And the best player on the Giants is running back Saquon Barkley, who only played 13 games last year, was obviously not 100% when he returned from injury, yet still managed 1,000 yards on the ground. Now, while he did regress slightly from his freshman year, in large part due to injury, he's still the best player on the Giants without a shadow of a doubt. Moving on to the AFC East, the best player on the Patriots is cornerback Stephon Gilmore, who was the best defensive player in the NFL in 2019, hands down, leading the league with 6 interceptions and locking down practically every single wide receiver that crossed his path. Fact is, last year Gilmore was the best corner in the game and a cornerstone to that lethal Patriots defense. The best player on the Bills is cornerback Tre'Davious White, who led the league with 6 interceptions, tied with Gilmore and Anthony Davis, but he had the most forced fumbles of the 3 along with the most solo tackles of the 3. Fact is, White is having a great start to his career and looks to continue his dominance into his 4th season with the Bills. The best player on the Jets is safety Jamal Adams, who did take a slight step back in 2019. However, the president did put up solid numbers at the safety position with 75 combined tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a pick 6. But he also did miss 2 games, and who knows what numbers he would have put up if he had all 16 games down on his resume. And the best player on the Dolphins is wide receiver Devontae Parker, who spent 2019 working with subpar quarterback talent in its truest sense of the word, and still hauled in 72 passes for 1,202 yards, and I'm telling you, man, Tua is going to have an absolute field day with Devontae Parker if the Dolphins end up getting Tua. Moving on to the NFC South, the best player on the Saints is wide receiver Michael Thomas, who broke the single-season reception total in 2019 with 149 catches for 1,725 yards and was targeted 185 times, catching 80% of the passes thrown his way, which is insane. And then you add on the fact that he didn't have Drew Brees for 5 of those games. He's making a case for being the best wide receiver in the league right now. The best player on the Falcons is wide receiver Julio Jones, who is without a doubt the most talented wide receiver in the NFL. Julio put up 1,394 yards in 2019 with 99 receptions, continuing his dominance for yet another year. And when all is said and done, Julio will be considered one of the best to ever play at the wide receiver position. The best player on the Buccaneers is wide receiver Chris Godwin, who, despite the addition of Tom Brady, I still believe is the best player on the Bucs. He made a case for being one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in his 2019 campaign with 1,333 receiving yards with just 86 receptions, all of this while catching passes from Jameis Winston. Fact is, Godwin and Brady are going to be an absolutely lethal duo. And the best player on the Panthers is running back Christian McCaffrey, who was practically the entire Panthers offense in 2019. He was a dark horse MVP candidate all year, rushing for 1,387 yards through 287 carries, landing in the top 3 of rushing yard leaders in 2019, and was absolutely unstoppable. McCaffrey is one of the best running backs in the league, hands down. Moving on to the AFC South, the best player on the Jaguars is wide receiver DJ Clark, who, with Calais Campbell gone, becomes the Jaguars' best player, recording 73 catches for 1,008 yards and 8 touchdowns. And fact is, the Jaguars are running very thin on talent and they need some serious help. The best player on the Colts is linebacker Darius Leonard, who dominated in his second year with the Colts, proving his first year in the league was no fluke. He racked up 5 interceptions, 121 combined tackles, and 5 sacks en route to a dominant 2019 season. The best player on the Texans is quarterback Deshaun Watson, who was incredible in his third year with the Houston Texans, leading the team to the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. However, with DeAndre Hopkins gone and Bill O'Brien being, Bill O'Brien, a lot will be asked of Watson in 2020. And the best player on the Titans is running back Derrick Henry, who lit the NFL on fire in the Titans' miraculous run in the postseason, leading them all the way to the AFC Championship. He led the league in rushing yards in 2019, eclipsing 1,500 yards on the ground, and is easily the best player on the Titans. Moving on to the NFC West, the best player on the 49ers is tight end George Kittle, who, let's be honest, I'll argue is the best tight end in the game. He caught 79% of his targets in 2019 for 1,053 yards last season and paid big dividends with his blocking prowess in the run game. I mean, you can argue otherwise, but to me, there's no debate. Kittle is the best tight end in the NFL. The best player on the Rams is defensive end Aaron Donald, who isn't getting enough attention for what he did last year, and that's simply because it doesn't compare to his 2018 season, which was an all-time great season among defensive players in NFL history. However, Donald was absolutely dominant in 2019 with 13 sacks and 2 forced fumbles, along with 20 tackles for loss. Donald is still at the top of his game and really needs some more respect on his name. The best player on the Seahawks is quarterback Russell Wilson, who I could very easily argue is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Russ had an MVP caliber year with 4,110 passing yards, 31 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, and a single season completion percentage of 66.1. Give Russ a better O-line and the Seahawks will be the top Super Bowl contender in the NFC. And the best player on the Cardinals is wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who, no matter what way you cut it, is a top 3 wide receiver in the league right now. Although he had a relative down year in 2019 for his standards with 104 receptions for 1,165 yards, even without taking a single snap for the team, he's already the Cardinals' best player. And lastly, moving on to the AFC West, the best player on the Chiefs is quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who, heading into his 3rd year as a full-time starter in the league, may just be the most talented quarterback we've ever seen. Coming off of an incredible playoff run and a Super Bowl win along with an MVP, Mahomes is at the top of his game and is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not the best. The best player on the Raiders is running back Josh Jacobs, who had a phenomenal rookie campaign, picking up 1,150 yards on the ground in just 13 games. I mean, had he played the full 16 games, he probably would have had the 3rd most rushing yards in the league with an estimated 1,416 yards, and the Raiders have got themselves a workhorse back for years to come. The best player on the Chargers is defensive end Joey Bosa, who put up 12 sacks in 2019 with 67 combined tackles and a whopping 31 quarterback hits. Now, his little brother Nick Bosa may be taking the league by storm, but that does not mean you could forget about older brother Joey Bosa by any means. And lastly, the best player on the Broncos is linebacker Von Miller, who took a huge step back in 2019, going from 5 sacks to just 8, racking up less combined tackles and going from 4 forced fumbles to none. This was a serious down year for Von, so much that I almost put Courtland Sutton on here. However, I still do think that Von Miller will be able to rebound in 2020. He may be nearing the end of his career, but I think he has, at the very least, one more monstrous season in him. And that's going to just about do it for this video, but before I go, let me ask you, who do you think is the best player in the NFL?